All right, so one of the things that you're going to notice in a lot of my videos and a lot of the content here at School of Cards and Beyond Tells is that I'm hyper focused or hypersensitive to language. I'm always defining specific words and I'm always calling out people's language. And I do this for a couple of reasons. The first is there is some truth to like the language creates your reality, right? So if you're using a lot of negative words, you're going to create a lot of negative reality for yourself, or the situation that you put in is created by the language that you use. There's a big difference between you saying like, I am challenged by this, or this is so overwhelming, I'm not sure how I'm going to continue. Those are two different ways of conceptualizing or framing a situation. Now, usually that's what discussion about language is referring to, like sort of bigger picture. But also, language is critical when you develop a thought process and you learn to play this game. So, for example, some of you use words like tight, or some of you use words like balance, or some of you use all these words are used incorrectly. And when the words are used incorrectly or not defined operationally, we have problems with our thought process on the table. And one of the things that I have been seeing over the past couple of years when people do assessments and people send us hands and all that is the word should. For example, this player should only have value here, or this player should be doing X or Y. And it's very popular with people who have a strong online background and have a more default style of playing poker, or in certain specific game conditions, for example, like high stakes games where everybody knows the sort of trends and dynamics that occur in that game, or with the same group of players. And what happens is the should term is not that bad in those areas. But the language trickles down to live and mid-stakes games, and it creates a hell of a lot of problems. So I want to explain to you first, why is the word should bad? And first, it creates a lot of projection and doesn't establish the reality of the player in front of you. So in a live game, players should or shouldn't be doing anything. That's just the reality in front of you. You're sitting down with the player that has their own reasons on why they're playing the game, that has their own background when it comes to skill and education. And when you start to conceptualize things of like should or shouldn't, what tends to happen is first, it leads to frustration, right? Players are like, this player should never be calling there. They should never be calling there. Well, no. The player could do whatever the hell they want. They have a different experience. They have a different circumstance. You, in your game, if you have this concept of should or using this word should, or you know what's right or not right in the game, 4 or 5 years ago, you probably look at your own play and say, oh, shouldn't have done that. It's not smart to call out of position with that hand. It should be 3-betting. Like, that's going to occur in players. And when you don't actually conceptualize things from what is actually in front of me, it leads to problems. And, don't forget, players could do whatever the hell they want at the poker table. Whatever they want. Their money, their choice. We're all individuals. We're all 100% responsible for our own actions in life. And when you frame things in should, it leads to problems. And another thing is it tends to cap players' ability to exploit live players who do so many things that they shouldn't do. So there's a lot of mistakes being played at live games. When you view things from the perspective of should and shouldn't, you're not able to adjust as effectively, and you're not able to play a more exploitive style of poker where you're looking at the person that's in front of you and you're saying, wow, this player should be doing all these things, but the reality is this is what they are actually doing, and this is how I can adjust my strategy or adjust my approach to affect that. Most players just say, this is the way poker should be playing, you're not doing that, and that's the end of the story. And I see that a lot when players send in hand histories, and I'm like, okay. And also one last thing before I give you some advice on how to use the word should, you know, one of the things I find interesting is a lot of people who say players should be doing something or shouldn't be doing something, they're wrong themselves. So they're like, oh, this player should be doing X. And I'm like, well, why? And they can't even justify why that player should be doing that. So you cannot think of poker as this massive vacuum when you're playing live. Online, different situation. But when you're playing live, low stakes games, the kinds of players that you're playing with are not going to be playing anywhere close to what you should think they're playing. So one of the things that's really helpful, the only way you should use the word should is if you use should and but. So for example, this player should be doing X, but based on the fact that they're, on their phone, not paying attention, blah, 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 they are probably doing Y. And it allows you to understand where your projection of a baseline strategy in poker is, but you can also see how that opponent or how that player might be deviating from that strategy. It is very, very, very helpful. language is just so critical when developing a thought process. So you need to be hyper aware of it because it not only creates a reality, but it creates the foundation of your reads, it's the foundation of how you play, how you adjust. So it's really important. If you see the word should, try to add should and but. I know this sounds a little bit more meta, a little bit more theoretical, but it does have a big impact on how you actually think through spots and how you actually play the game. So anyways, subscribe and like below because that is what you should be doing. I should eat cauliflower rice, grass-fed beef, asparagus, and some water, but I'm in Vegas, so let's get Taco y Taco. So Eddie loves this place called Taco y Taco. He goes there like every day. Maybe we should see if this video should be sponsored by Taco y Taco. School of Cards sponsored by Taco. This video is unofficially sponsored by Taco y Taco, 2 locations in Las Vegas. Which is the better one? The one in Southeastern. The one on Southeastern is much better.
Shout out to Chava.
Shout out to Chava. The what?
The Burrito Man.
The Burrito Man. Make sure you get the El Pastor video. Tacos. It's a.
Chava's at the Burrito Academy.
It's a School of Cards place in Vegas.